Hey, what's going on, my friend? It's Jeff Newpert from chasingstrength.com. And in today's video, we are going to discuss the best number of sets and reps for your kettlebell workouts. All right, so let's dive in, give you a little bit of context for the purpose of this video or the background of this video, okay? So the other day, I got a message from one of my customers, Luis, and he was asking if there was an optimum, or a.k.a. also known as a best number of sets and reps that he should aim for in one of my programs. But before I answer that question, researchers and coaches have been attempting to answer this question for years, if not decades, right? So let's just cover off on some common goals. Number one, to build muscle, which that's a goal many guys have. Brad Schoenfeld, PhD, is arguably the West, or by West, I mean like Western European, right? America's one of the West's most prolific muscle building / hypertrophy researchers, has found that you need more than 10 sets per muscle group per week. According to him, in his meta-analysis, one of his meta-analyses, he found a range, was as wide as 10 up to 45 sets, depending on the muscle group, right? The larger the number of sets, the more days you should train. And the rep ranges, well, they were all over the place, from 1 to 6, 8 to 12, and as high in some cases as 30. All right. So number two, what if you want to get stronger? What if that's your number one goal? Well, Peterson and his colleagues suggest 2 to 6 sets per muscle group per training session. The Soviets, well, they recommended between 200 and 500 lifts per month, depending on the lift. Okay. Generally agreed upon is the fact that you need to keep your intensity or percentage of your one repetition max between 75 and 85% most of the time. And occasionally, about 5 to 7% of the time, you're going to venture into the 90% plus zone. Okay. Reps, they're generally in the 1 to 5, 1 to 6 range. The one thing that very few people discuss, other than Pavel Tsatsouline, Olympic lifting coaches and powerlifting coaches, and of course myself, is the importance of technique with regard to your kettlebell, right, exercises. Although, let me just put a little caveat in here. Olympic lifting coaches, and powerlifting coaches don't care about your kettlebell technique, right? But what I'm talking about is the technique in reference to the lifts. But for our purposes, Pavel and I, we're about the only ones that I'm aware of who actually talk about your technique. So let's dig a little deeper on the technique thing. Most people, especially ex-jocks, just trying to get back in shape, the old get back in shape. Well, they miss this part, this technique part, and they aim for either increasing their volume, right, the number of sets they can do, or their intensity, the load used relative to the percentage of one rep max. And the result, the downside of doing that, especially for guys our age, over 40, over 50, you know who you are, right? The end result is usually injury. That's all I'm going to say about the strength thing and the technique thing, because that's not the purpose of this video, but I did think it's something to make you aware of. Okay. Number three, what about conditioning? What are the best sets and reps for conditioning? Well, over the last 7 years or so, I guess maybe we could even say as long as 10 years, probably 2013, 2014, 2016, around that time frame, inside the hard style kettlebell community, we've seen the trend, move away from the Metcon style, beatdown style conditioning session, or similar to that CrossFit style workout, towards what's called AGT, or anti-glycolytic training. And that's basically where you're trying to delay the onset of glycolysis. Okay. That's another topic for another time, but I just thought I'd give you a little bit more background there. And that's been predominantly championed by guys like Pavel, right, and Al Ciampa and some other people inside the community. So instead of training towards near exhaustion on every set with short, seemingly non-existent or incomplete rest periods, there's been a transition towards high power, almost luxurious rest period based training, right? So instead of, an extreme example would be a Tabata type protocol. I talked about that in some of my other videos. So instead of using an inverted rest period, like 20 seconds of work and 10 seconds of rest, and doing that for 8 intervals, okay, we'll see the flip side. We'd see like 10 seconds of work and 50 to 60 seconds of rest. Okay, it would be 10 and 50 if you were doing something like on the minute. 10 seconds of work on the minute, that's about 5 reps. Okay, so the total number of sets in this type of AGT style, high power, luxurious rest type of training would be between 10 and 30 sets usually, and sometimes as high as 40 to 60 sets. Now, number 4, what if your main goal, your main priority is to lose body fat? Well, those guidelines, they're all over the board depending on who you listen to. Okay, I have my own theory, right? My own guidelines based on the last 30 years of experience. They're going to be different from other people's. But the short story is use your kettlebells to train like a power athlete and eat like your grandma told you to. Okay, that's the easiest way to lose body fat with kettlebells. So back to Luis's question, how many sets should you do? Well, ultimately, that's going to depend on 5 different things that are relative to you and your situation, right? The first one is your goal. The second one is your current strength levels. The third one is your current conditioning levels. The fourth is your access to the right size kettlebells. The fifth is your schedule currently, right? And if we are putting a time frame on your goal, which is pretty smart, what is your schedule going to look like 2, 3, 4, 6, 12 weeks from now? Is it going to be exactly the same as it is today, or is it going to change? That's why you'll rarely see in any of my programs set rep guidelines like 5 sets of 5 reps. Now, unless, of course, I'm working with a private client and I know his or her training and injury histories. Okay. But what I've found works best, the old best, air quotes, for most of us over a certain age, right? Over 40, over 50, over 60 is the following, right? The following 3 guidelines. You might want to print this out, right? Copy this down if you're watching the video. And what I mean by print this out is you can copy and paste this. We'll put these guidelines in the description below. So number 1, instead of following sets and reps and prescribed rest periods, set a training duration to which or around which you can constantly adhere. Okay. So for example, that would look something like this. I'll train for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. That's what I can give this. Okay. Number 2, do as many sets of the prescribed exercise or exercises for the prescribed reps. Okay. Resting between sets, or I should say resting enough between sets to make each and every rep look and feel the same. Now, this is pretty challenging, especially if you've come from the go heavy, right, or go home, or go hard or go home, train to failure mindset. Okay, this will take you some time to calibrate because we are not training to failure. Okay, that's another topic for another time. So what that means is that your rest periods will most likely increase between each set as fatigue accumulates as the workout continues, right? So you'll rest shorter at the beginning of the workout and rest longer between sets towards the end of the workout. Again, that's perfectly normal. All right, number 3, once a week, maybe more, see if you can underachieve, okay? And get 1 more rep or 1 more set, and maybe even both. Okay. Some days and weeks will feel great and some won't. And that is okay. As long as you're recording your progress in your training journal, right? And look, do yourself a favor. If you don't have a training journal or training log, whatever you want to call it, start keeping one. That way you can track your progress and measure it over the course of weeks, months, and years. Okay. And that way you'll know if you're actually getting results or if you're just kidding yourself. Okay, so how well does this concept or these concepts work? Well, one of my private clients, we'll call him Ryan, okay, for privacy purposes, packed on about 15 pounds of muscle without even trying over the course of this past year and repeatedly PR is personal record. So repeatedly set personal records in his military press, both in the load, right, the weight lifted and the total number of reps lifted, as well as his front squats and his parallel dips, which he actually could not do previously because of a shoulder injury. Okay, so can't do parallel dips. Now he can do parallel dips. Now, I think this is pretty significant for him because he's brought some health issues to the table, which typically make it difficult to gain muscle. And if you've been struggling to see results from your training or your workouts, whatever you want to call them, just feel free to use the guidelines in this video. Okay, we'll leave the guidelines in the description below. And if you prefer to skip the trial and error process and take the built for you option, I'll leave a link in the description below for a program that a lot of guys love. In fact, some guys say it's the best kettlebell program they've ever used. So hopefully you found this video helpful. And if you did, go ahead and click the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. If you found it really helpful, hit the share button, share it across social media and share it with your friends and family members even, right? Who you know would benefit from this information. All right. Until next time, my friend, stay strong.